my guest, Miss Michelle Mashburn. She is a disability rights advocate as well as a disabled worker. And so she has just as much expertise to talk about this as anybody who I know. Michelle, so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining the summit.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Hopefully sound is okay and everything. It's always, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm a little, rusty with what I'm doing, but it's great to be here. And just to echo what JB said, the rates of disability are greater than they ever have been because primarily of capitalism and the lack of worker protections in job places and our many other issues that we have. So it's like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people currently are disabled, but even more than that, people have a disabling condition that qualifies them for workplace accommodations and other things, but yet the laws are really kind of inconsistent in the application and stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I want to appreciate and add on to, like I said, you may end up into an accident where it may cause you to be disabled, or you may have a disease that you may not know of that may cause you to have a disability, or you may just grow to the point where you start to become elderly and our bodies break down. And so this is why this is so important. One of the things that I wanted to jump into, and let me go to my list here, is first off, I want to talk about disability benefits, pros and cons, because a lot of us who are disabled, we want to get into the workforce. And this is also great information for you if in case you do become disabled. So the disability pros and cons, you and I both know that the disability process, especially according to the federal government, is very convoluted. It is, lack of a better word, difficult. It is just an arduous process where you have to go through twists and turns, sign a bunch of different applications, go through a bunch of different hoops with speaking with doctors and what have you. And so can you go over just in your mind how, some of the difficulties that people may run into? Because I know that going through the disability process, it can have its benefits, but also its disadvantages. So can you just go over that initial process from the start?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to talk about. Number one, the system is set up to not give you disability benefits unless you can't do any work whatsoever. And then the benefits that they give you, many people within the disability community will talk about they're designed to keep us kind of more oppressed because of the rates and things like that of, the level we receive on that public benefit, even if we qualify for the supplement, SSDI as opposed to SSI that is based on your work history.
Your sound went out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yay.
Okay, good.
I have a headset that likes to disconnect frequently because
that's fine. That's
patch
fine.
things together to make it work, and sometimes it just doesn't. What I was saying is Social Security disability is designed to kind of prevent us. For some workers, they have a benefit of getting long-term or short-term disability through their workplace as well, which can offset that demand. But for people in lower income, lower wage jobs, you don't always have access to that. So with Social Security disability, it's this intensive application that is daunting to even look at. And then if you're struggling with health and stuff, you're already in a position that you're one under. You're struggling. You don't have the physical or mental capacity to do much at that point, but yet you have to go through these steps that include a long application that digs into things that you're not even ready to deal with, admitting to yourself, because our structures are baked into that. Internalized ableism is a diet that we eat on a steady. So internalized ableism comes from the laws, the structures, the history, and everything else. So you go through Social Security, you knock on their door, you say, okay, I need to apply for this. They may throw you 6 or 8 appointments They may throw you to a medical provider. Even though your doctors already are substantiating your disability, you then have to do that much more work.
Yes.
And on a family that's newly disabled, a member of a family becomes newly disabled, they're struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling to survive. They're struggling to maybe get a new job in the first time in a while because they were the stay-at-home parent and now they suddenly have to work. So these things all impact our capacity to do these things. Mm-hmm. And throughout all of this, the other side that happens is you almost become a pariah to your working colleagues, your work colleagues, because you're the example they don't want to look at. They don't want to see.
Yeah. And can we also talk about, because I wanted to add this point, parents who may become disabled? What about childcare? That's something that a lot of people don't think about. So if you're disabled and that interferes with you being able to take care of your kid, and let's say you're a single parent, right? Then how does that interfere with childcare? Because then you're not as able to take care of your kid. And then let's say you are a partner in a relationship and you do have a partner, but they have to go to work and they can't be there to help take care of the kid. And then you're having a tough time as a disabled person now taking care of your kid. So now what? See what I mean? So please go continue, but I just wanted to add that in as well.
No, and I think it's important because while there are programs out there to offer subsidized childcare to do these other things, the process of navigating these systems has so many gaps within them. You know, so you don't know how to apply for food stamps or for childcare or for WIC. You know, as somebody who's been proud worker for years and years and years, you don't know these programs. I mean, I'd say it's better today than it was the way it used to be, because I think capitalism has stretched the worker dollars so much that more people are tapping into these programs and services before we reach the point of disability. But then the question comes in of value too, of the value of the work that you're doing. All work should be valued, you know, whether you're a stay-at-home parent or anything else, you know, that's still labor. So why does our government not subsidize that labor also by giving, you know, to just level things out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things that I actually wanted to talk about, and this is actually going to come out from our anecdotal evidence, is that, you know, the application process is long, depending on your circumstance. I did not know what to do. And then even reading the directions for the application process, it is complex because I don't have the best reading comprehension sometimes. And so the way things are worded on the websites, on the government websites. And so fortunately for me, I actually had friends when I was in a religious organization. They actually brought me there to the church, opened up their laptop, sat down with me and asked me questions and went through the application process with me. But I was fortunate in that I actually had people around me who knew the process, but not everybody does. And so when you're going through that process, it's frustrating because then you also have to look for papers and forms and all these different things in order to legitimize your claim to something that's supposed to be provided for you. And it's just like, for instance, they're like, oh, well, we need a copy of your driver's license. You mean to tell me the federal government can't go into the state database and actually get a copy of our driver's licenses already? I'm sorry, but I thought all this was connected. Oh, you guys want a copy of my pay stubs, yet my pay stubs are constantly being submitted. My pay is constantly being submitted to the IRS. Why in the world wouldn't, you know, my pay and my, you know, my benefits and all these things, my pay stubs and how much I made, why wouldn't that already be within the database for the IRS? Right? It doesn't make sense. And so it's like, well, we want to make you work for it, even though I did through my tax dollars already.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job being
Mhm.
disabled, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. With my mother, I helped her apply for benefits, and that was actually I could remember more of that process than my own application for for disability.
Yeah.
Even though with my application, I had to go in front of an administrative law judge,
You
in
did?
order to qualify. Yeah, I had to appeal it. But luckily, I had legal aid support at that point. I was in Michigan. They had a fairly good program, but I was so lost in myself because that was the crisis point that I was in of realizing, oh my goodness, I can't work when I'm from a lower class, lower income level white population. My family believed in pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and it's all about you and look out for number one. And I was failing my family, and that's the message that I got repeatedly. Not so much with my mom, but they're just it's that internalized ableism. So the other part of this is it's a long process. There
Yeah.
are many people that die waiting for disability benefits to come in. There are
Yeah.
many people that resort to, well, I can work some, so I'm going to go to work, and that automatically bounces you out of the system and you're no longer
Yes.
disabled.
Yeah. Because
So yeah,
well, I
it's
was gonna say because they well, apparently you still can work, so you don't need this system, even though you really do. It's just you're suffering yourself in order to sustain yourself until you can get the disability.
right.
And on top of it, I just want to hark back on what you said earlier. You had to go through a judge, and this is known information. You will get denied 2, 3, and 4 times before you're ever approved, even though you're legitimately disabled and it was verified by a physician.
Well, I'm kind of in that mess right now because
Oh,
I
wow.
I tried to work, and I made a significant amount of money. I worked hard in my time that I was disabled of learning and filling up my skill bucket and my everything else, and I got this amazing job that was inaccessible and a lot of ableism that I encountered and very kind of unhealthy for me as well. But
Mhm.
that trial work period that I was working there, Social Security is now saying I am no longer disabled. Because I earned X amount of money. It doesn't matter that I still have every single health condition that I had prior to receiving my benefits. And at this point, I mean, that's just really hard. And I don't want to harp on it too much. It kind of sucks. Fortunately, I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of resources that I set my situation up in a way that I was having faith in myself and faith in my community that I could see whatever complication happened through.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a really bad situation because I'm registered with Department of Rehabilitation, and with that, there's a few protections. I'm also in a period of expedited reinstatement. So hopefully, but it's a lot of bureaucratic process that I now have to do at a time when I really need to be focused on looking for work. But I don't have. You can't juggle both of these things at once. It's really, really hard. Kind of to go back to my mother's experience on applying, because that's what I remember a whole lot more. She had shingles, recurring shingles. She would have 2 ounces of stress and her shingles would flare back up and she would be in massive pain. She also had lupus and a number of other autoimmune issues. She went to her doctor when she was struggling with the shingles, and she's like, "What can I do, doctor, to get better?" And he's like, "Oh no, you just die." Yeah. And to add to that, Social Security told her she still had use of her hands. She still had mental capacity. Therefore, she was not disabled. So we had to appeal it. And each time you receive this denial of benefits, you're gutted because it's like an invalidation of your lived experience of what you're
Yes.
experiencing. And so she was gutted each time she got the denial. And then finally, I realized the gap, because a lot of this comes down to what they're reading versus what you're saying and how to get them to align. The gap was they were missing certain context. But then that triggered, she put in an appeal requesting to go in front of an administrative law judge because that's the way to push the system. it can backfire, but it's often the only pathway to expediting or pushing through that barrier of, oh, you still can work a minimum wage job and expect to survive, kind of thing. Without health benefits, without everything else that, you and I both know we can't lose our health benefits ever, because that's catastrophic. But so when she flipped that switch based on me seeing that gap, she then got it approved. However, it didn't go retroactive. It went from the date she submitted that extra documentation that then they decided, oh, this is okay. Now we can say you're officially disabled, even though nothing had changed. So,
yeah. And the thing is that the time you are disabled, when that starts, once you're disabled, then you have to go through the application process, which is some time, but you don't get any type of assistance retroactively from the time you started being disabled. It only starts when you start the application process. So that point in time between you becoming disabled and you applying for disabled, that's no money. That could be months. So therefore, you are stuck like Chuck if you don't have anybody supporting you at all, right? Or you have very little support. But then you start the application process, but you don't get any type of assistance whatsoever until the approval of the application. Once the approval of the application happens, then they can retroactively go, okay, so this is when you started applying. We can give you the money for this. But even the money that they give you is starvation income. So I want to go here. Look. If you guys have anybody disabled in your life, a lot of us are not okay. And this is why. And this is why we're going to get into this with workers. Because if you are a worker, where's my mouse going? Okay. If you are a worker and are disabled, there is only so much income you can make before they designate you're no longer disabled. So let me see here. Okay. So this website here, this is out of disabilitybenefitshelp.org. Says, how much money can you make on disability? Actually, let me enlarge this just a little bit. All right, perfect. It says, since its inception, Social Security has benefited hundreds of millions of Americans in need. A large portion of these benefits go to those with severe disabilities who are unable to earn sufficient wages. To be sure, Social Security goes to those who need it most. Income plays a large role in deciding who receives Social Security disability insurance, SSDI, and supplemental security income. How much can you make on disability? This is important. The current income limit for Social Security disability insurance, which is people like myself, is $1,470 per month for non-blind individuals and $2,460 per month for blind individuals. This earning limit is also known as the substantial gainful activity. To keep in line with the 2023 cost of living adjustment increase, or COLA, the Social Security Administration's monthly earnings limit for how much money you can make on Social Security disability also increased for 2023. It says if a non-blind Social Security disability insurance recipient were to earn more than $1,470 per month, or $2,460 per blind recipient, your benefits will stop. This happened to me a few years ago. Okay? And I was under the impression, because some people will say, well, if you make $1 over, they'll take 50 cents away, blah, blah, blah. That's for Social Security retirement.
And for SSI.
And for SSI. For me, on Social Security disability insurance, that means that if I go over $1 over, I think, like a 6-month period, then they take my entire Social Security benefits away, meaning my primary source of income was stripped from me. And so This is why it is very difficult. It is goddamn hard to be disabled in this country and to try to earn an income.
Yeah.
Because none of us are just going to come into some big windfall of money so we can say, all right, Social Security, y'all can keep y'all money. I got mine. It doesn't happen that way. And so, and for me, it was less than what the allowance is a couple years back. Now it's $1,470. Back then, it was about $1,210.
Right. There are some protections that people qualify for, but if you're not aware of those protections, or if you're not tracking those items, there's a 9-month trial work period that if you're reaching it, and the amount for the trial work period is actually a whole lot lower than that substantially gainful activity. To track substantial work, I think, is a lower money amount. And that's like not clear with a lot of people. So we end up with the gap of knowledge, or the gap of, I swear it's hoarded power. I'm going to just say that because these bureaucratic systems kind of weaponize the information stream and make it like our responsibility to know all of these things. Even if you go in and engage with a worker, they're not going to be fully transparent. It'll depend on who you meet with and how busy their day has been, and if they're mad at the universe or not, and in Social Security, everybody I think is mad at the universe sometimes, understandably so. But so you have that 9-month trial work period, and then you have a 3-month kind of process before you totally get turned off. Through all of this, though, you have the hammer hanging over you of, oh, but you might have to repay back benefits if we didn't find this soon enough. We're going to make you pay 2 or 3 months back to us, regardless of whether you're still working or not. So that expedited reinstatement. Voc Rehab is another resource that people need to utilize more and be more aware of. However, I'll state funding streams to the Department of Rehabilitation and the vocational rehabilitation services are not adequate to where they can work with every single person. Ticket to Work is another program that can assist you in holding on to your benefits. And the other thing that I tend to use that a lot of people don't use is impairment-related work expenses. When you have impairment-related work expenses that allow, if you don't pay those, you can't work. Those can also offset your earnings a little bit. But it's inconsistent, and it's based on Social Security approving that. So it's not, often it feels like a one and done thing because of the gaps in that information stream that doesn't inform us of all of the ways that we can work with the system to protect our benefits while we're trying to build a better kind of universe for ourselves,
Yeah. And so along with, what you were saying, this, of course, if you get to the point where they stop your payments, then the period of where they think that they overpaid you, they will want every single dime of what you got paid from Social Security disability back. They will want you to pay it back. So let's say over the 6-month period, you made $100, $200 a month more than what they allowed, right? And you did that for 6 months. They won't ask back for the over amount that you earned. They're going to ask for the entire payments of your Social Security disability payments that they gave you over those last 6 months. So let's say you earn $100 extra per month for 6 months over the limit, right? That's $600. They're not going to ask for that back. Let's say you get $1,000 from Social Security disability. You're going to have to pay back $6,000 because they want their money back, not what you over earned. Because you dared to go over even 1 cent. So that's how the system is set up. And that's why a lot of people who are disabled really live in poverty. And this is just the pros and cons of weighing while you're disabled. Should I go to work? Is this going to be that big of a risk to me? And then you also had to get into, like, for me, people like me who are under time constraints. I'm on kidney dialysis 3 days a week. After dialysis, I'm wiped out. So that only gives me 4 days a week to actually work. And then on top of it, do I have time off outside of work and dialysis? I did dialysis and work for 2 years, and I did not have a day off at all. I worked 2 years nonstop, because being on dialysis is like having a job, because by the time you're done, you are wiped out far more than what the average person feels after a days of work. And so 3 times a week, I'm feeling like that. Then 3 times a week, I'm also working 10 to 12 hour shifts every single day. So what days off do I have? I had none. And my family was begging me, take a day off, just call into work. And I couldn't, because if I did, that means there'll be work that'll be paid that I didn't get.
Yep. I mean, I think there's calculations out there as a disabled person, like it's a lot in the spinal cord injury community that you see these calculations. And more recently, we've been seeing them in some of the advocacy groups that are doing good work, or decent work, I'll say, not awesome work, but good work. You know, where the life management stuff, like for me, I have an in-home care provider that comes in and is with me usually 6 hours a day. So on top of that 6 hours, if I'm working 8 hours, that's 14 hours, you know, and that's my day. That's what it takes for me to work and to live, you know, and to support my basic needs. But in the United States, we kind of criminalize those needs, or we make them, we other those needs. It's like, oh, well, that's special stuff, you know, and it's like, no, this is, everybody has healthcare needs. Everybody has health needs. Everybody has wellness needs. Everybody has even workplace needs of getting our, you know, feeling like we're worth something and valuable and contributing to society without having, you know, without being totally dehumanized, which is often what I feel in many of these situations. I actually, at one point in my pathway with disability, I was in a sheltered workplace. So I was receiving sub-minimum wage, where I was cutting old clothing into rags, where if I didn't meet the quota of cutting those clothes into rags, they could put my wages down to literally pennies a piece.
Hold up.
Sorry, I threw a spanner in the works.
Can we stop and talk about sub-minimum wages and how that is, to me, is inhumane as well? Because the fact that we have really a two-tiered system when it comes to wages, based on the person's ability, we actually have 2 tiers. You have minimum wage and you have sub-minimum wage. And I think the sub-minimum wage is like $4.75 an hour.
No, it can go down to as low as $1 an hour. It depends on the program. And the toxic part of sub-minimum wage is that nonprofits are providing services to these people. They provide like a job coach, and they provide, you know, kind of that supportive network, that the accommodations required for somebody to work. So when you see some disabled people in grocery stores or at different coffee houses, in some situations, these people are in a sheltered work situation where they're receiving sometimes minimum wage, sometimes a lot less than minimum wage. And that's legal because of it's offset by the expense of the nonprofit that has to provide these services. So it's a constant devaluation of the disabled person that's happening with this. The system is set up, and that's kind of the one the Instagram post that I shared with you. Do you want me to share that real quick?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, let me do that. I have it queued up so I can do this, I think.
You go to present at the bottom.
Yeah. I got it. Except it's only letting me do this screen. Crap. Okay, I can get it real quick. Keep talking. I'll let you talk, and okay. I'll get this up.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing about sub minimum wage is that it's really inhumane, because my thing is, if you can do the job, then you should get paid for how much it costs to do the job. So, I've seen this many times, especially at places like Salvation Army and Goodwill. They will have people who are disabled and they're paying them a sub minimum wage in order to work for these companies. Meanwhile, their CEOs are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And my question is, I thought you guys were supposed to be these God-fearing companies, these religious organizations that are supposed to be helping people, and yet you're making hand over fist and making profit, really, for the CEOs and the people at the top, but yet you're paying people who are disabled a sub minimum wage just because you don't feel that they can earn adequately based on, a intellectual disability that they may have. It's just like if you're at some place, let's say hypothetically, you see somebody with Down syndrome and they're working. Chances are that person with Down syndrome is actually making a sub minimum wage. And then they'll say, well, it's just because they just need to be busy. I'm like, I don't care if you need me to be busy. Pay me the wage that you would pay anybody else, because the work is being done. I don't care if it's just to keep me busy. I don't care. Look, CEOs will talk about, oh, I just like to stay busy, but they still get millions of dollars a year, boo. It don't matter. Same thing. Guess what? If they can get paid millions of dollars just to stay busy, then guess what? Pay people who have intellectual disabilities a living wage too, because they're doing the work. Pay based on the work, not on what you think they are. This chaps my ass. This is the same excuse that people will use for teenagers. Go, well, teenagers, they should get paid based on their age. Who in the world says you get paid based on your age? That's ageism. Mm-hmm. See, a lot of people talk about ageism when it comes to older people. Let's talk about ageism when it comes to younger people. If you are a teenager and you're doing the job, you get paid for the same amount that any adult does. If you're a teenager and you're working for a landscaping company and all the adult landscapers are getting $25-$30 an hour, teenagers, you bet damn sure get paid $25-$30 an hour if you're able to do the job. Right. People say, well, what about experience? Things like that. The thing is that yes, experience can also pay more, but the thing is that you should not base the minimum or the living wage based on somebody's age. If you want to base it on experience, fine, but your standards should not be below what a living wage is.
Right.
Because you don't know what that teenager is going through. You don't know that teenager is trying to move out of their parents' house to be able to start their lives. It doesn't matter. The thing is that do that for them. I'm not sure if you got it already. Oh, yep.
I don't know if that shared it or not.
Yep, I got you.
Okay. And then it doesn't let me cursor through, does it? Let me
you shared it with me.
Yeah, I can put the link in the private too. So
yeah, just link it to me in the private chat.
Yep. So this quote is from a book called A Disability History of the United States. It's by Kim E. Nielsen. And I'm going to be starting a book club with a book discussion group with this book. And I'm doing it based on inclusion and inclusionary principles of facilitation.
Okay. Just letting you know, it says this page isn't available.
Oh, crap. Okay. I'll just read the quote and I can put it in chat for people that need it. Mm-hmm. So she goes through and she actually bases this on eras, on different eras. And what the quote is when disability is equated with dependency, disability is stigmatized. Citizens with disabilities are labeled inferior citizens. When disability is understood as dependency, disability is posited in direct contrast to American ideals of independence and autonomy. So to me, what that says is kind of this whole thing that we're struggling with, and kind of the internalized ableism diet that we all consume. Sure. Is, oh, we do services for those people. They don't have value because they're people. The history of this United States has created this process where disabled people are dehumanized and stigmatized and majorly othered in the grand scheme of things. So with all of that, it becomes, everybody sees these programs, including myself. There was a time when I saw these programs as just. And we don't know why they're not just, because we have so much coming at us that says disabled people are inadequate and deficit. You know, they need more help. You have to go to dialysis. Anybody, how many people, when they go see a doctor, they're like, oh, I can't not go, but I don't want to go. And, you know, that means I'm failing and, you know, whatever else. But yet health should be a right, and health should be a positive in our lives, and not this negative perception that we consume from the wellness industries, from the media industries, from the corporate industries. Unless you're an employee at those corporations, then you have plenty of wellness services accessible to you. That is like mind-boggling what becomes accessible to you when you have a quote unquote decent job, you know? So that dehumanization, I think, is important to bring in on this whole topic and everything else.
Yeah, because you're judged based on your ability to produce instead of you're being judged just for being a human being. And if you're able to do the job, then you should just get paid to be able to do the job, no matter who you are.
And why not just pay people to start with, so that everybody starts out? Because our economy would do a whole lot better if everybody had that baseline to start with, that we could contribute on an equal status as everybody else. Or if we just had those things not necessarily baked into the income stream and the profit loss margins of companies, you know?
Well, I mean, you're going into a part where we can talk about, because I prefer universal basic services or universal basic resources. So, you know, meaning that housing is a guaranteed right, education is a guaranteed right, food's a guaranteed right, and many things like this. And so if you don't have to worry about being homeless, being hungry, you know, not being able to get educated, then just those three alone. Oh, and also utilities as a right. And by utilities, I mean electricity, water, and internet. If you have all these things as a right and provided for you, then even if you don't work, you still are able to live. And so the thing is that people will look at us and think like, oh, you're crazy. But the thing is that then they're like, who will pay for it? And it's like, yeah, society pays for it anyway.
Yeah.
So why don't we just do it?
Yeah, sorry, I started too soon there.
No, you're good. And so that's something that I think about, because a lot of people will be like, oh, we should do universal basic income. I'm like, yeah, but that could be exploited. Right. You know, but universal basic services or universal basic resources is something that, like, how can they scalp off of your housing? Like, for instance, how can a landlord raise their rent if you're given housing as a right? And then, will landlords still exist?
When property becomes a shared commodity, I think everybody wins.
Oh, God. Aaron, clip that part. That's a great one. That was a good one.
You know, I've studied a lot about solidarity economy principles, you know, and things along those lines. And I see the beauty in that. I also see the beauty within transformative justice principles, especially when you're starting out in a toxic system to start with. Ableism is embedded, racism is embedded, xenophobia is embedded in our laws and our history. Therefore, how do we can never get rid of it, but we can prepare for it. We can prepare for it by creating a container, creating a process of calling people in when they misstep, because everybody also has to learn where they're wrong, because we all pick up these beliefs, and unless we agree to be in a community with people and to serve that community and protect that community. That doesn't mean we have to like everybody.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we have to agree with everybody. So and so could be spanking their child, and it's like, well, is it abuse? Is it not abuse? That's not 100% on me to do, but also part of caring for that community is creating healthier options and healthier alternatives. But we collectively have to share our stories and share our experiences to build that. What often happens today in the capitalism structure is that people prescribe things being right or wrong, and they tell us how things are, and they don't realize they have to check their bias. They don't realize they have to check their privilege. So through that process, the toxicity continues. And that's a big struggle that I see, because comfort is a freaking rubber band. What happens, people experience comfort, and when you experience comfort, you quickly forget and dissociate from the discomfort and the uncomfortable situations that you may have been stuck within. So there's a rubber band effect that no matter how hard a person tries, when they have elements of comfort in their life, they will forget some things just by just needing to distance from it. I mean, it's traumatic. Some of this stuff is traumatic. Racism is traumatic. Ableism is traumatic. Xenophobia is traumatic. These laws that we talk about, the ugly laws, talk about, how we are policing unhoused people for simply the act of existing. They're not allowed to be fed. They're not allowed to sleep on the sidewalks. They're not allowed, and then the ADA gets weaponized against them as well. So by creating a container that we say we expect racism, we expect ableism, we expect xenophobia, we expect misogyny, misogynoir, we expect these things. We create a process to call those people in and to collectively educate together with one another, not a top-down educate, but a totally horizontal educate of, here's my trauma, here's your trauma. Can we make this less traumatic for everybody in this community or in this commons? That's where it goes back to the solidarity economy.
But that comes with feeling that you are not greater than the other person next to you, which is something I think that minds need to change. And our society in a capitalistic structure actually enables people to have this mentality that I am better than you simply for my pedigree, simply because of the amount of money or the amount of exploitation somebody in my pedigree did before I even came along. And so therefore I am better than you just because of this particular issue. When in reality, none of us are actually better than one another. So therefore we should be willing to actually learn from one another, as well as change and improve ourselves based on the biases that we may have been inculcated with, within our lives. So I'm basically just saying, what you said, but I want to get to a couple of chats as well, because, some people have been expressing some great takes in the chat as well. Hence T says, filling out that form is so depressing. Yes, absolutely.
And every subsequent form after that, because you don't just, it's not one and done. You have to then file your every 3 years or every 7 years or every 10 years. And depending on who's freaking in office during those years, that 3 or 7 year expectation that you kind of remember, because you know what it's like to go through the trauma each time of filling out the update and certifying yourself as disabled. If it's Trump actually docked everybody that was classified as long-term disabled and put them on a 3-year review during Trump's administration. Biden has not fixed that 100% because, Democrats, if they don't see it, they're not going to do anything about it either. But I don't mean to make this that political, but I think it is political. That's the thing. And filling out the form, for me, I also have to certify for my in-home supportive services. I have to certify for my power wheelchair. And I just went through that process. And you literally have to tell them, I can't walk. I fall 6 times a day. You have to explicitly state those things. And sometimes, some days I don't fall 6 times, but you have to also go into those forms with not your Pollyanna-ish, this is my best day, I can do this if I try, but your worst day, your worst experience. What is it like being at your lowest? What is it like for you, JB, when you just have gone through a dialysis or right before the dialysis, you know?
I'm going to pause really quick. Sabby Sabs is coming to us live. Sabby.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm gonna walk down the street because I want to show you the sign. Charlie actually took our Boston chapter sign. You know that thumbnail we have that Aaron made the graphic?
Yeah.
And he blew it up.
Oh,
and made it as a banner. Yeah, I just want to show you. Hold on. Hey guys. And then I'll walk back inside and I'll show you the barbecue.
Okay, cool.
So let me just, okay, here we go. So here's the sign. Now I got this facing me. So let me see if I'm doing this right. Can you see?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is amazing.
Can you see it?
Beautiful.
I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
You guys see the sign?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right.
Nick said you're the GOAT, by the way.
So that's the sign. And then let me walk back in the church. Yo, it's hot as balls out here. Hold on. Let me go to. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Savvy. Good to see you.
Okay. I'm gonna walk back into the barbecue. So we did the catering through shout out to Blue Ribbon Barbecue, because having lived down south, I'm picky about my barbecue, but theirs is actually really, really good. I didn't get the collards though. I can't eat everybody collards. I also didn't get the potato salad. You can't eat everybody potato salad.
No, you can't.
Right?
You
No, you can't.
These are rules of law. But let me show you.
And mac and cheese too. But
Coleslaw
we
too.
come back in the church. Okay.
So
I'm gonna show you just the food.
Is actually at her Boston chapter. She's doing a barbecue right now for her RBN.
How do I flip this around? Can you guys see the food? Those are the drinks. I don't know if I'm holding this right, but
we can.
Yeah, you
okay.
are.
So there's cornbread, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, rice and beans, barbecue chicken.
Oh, nice.
Ribs, and pulled pork, buns, paper plates, and then what else did we get? Oh, and then we got sweet tea and lemonade. And Eric's here. Eric, you want to say hi?
Hey.
Hello. Yeah, you want to say hi? Say hi. Hello, I'm a fan. Hello.
Hello.
You want to say hi?
Hey, JB.
Hey.
Aisha, you want to say hi?
Yeah, so say hi.
Look at all these beautiful people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good to
So I
see
just wanted
everybody.
to step in and say hey.
Good. Thank you so much for coming in, Sabs, because the thing is that this is what it's about. It's about building community so that we can provide for the people in our community. So you're doing your thing out there in Boston. I'll be doing my thing in Berlin. I'm
David Gilton, the Gilton Man on Twitter. Remember?
Oh yeah. I'm just saying hi to JB.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
You want to say hi to JB?
Hey, JB.
Hey,
what's
how
up?
you doing?
Hello from Boston.
Okay, JB, I gotta go.
All right. Take care, Sabs.
Bye.
Hey, Eric. Yeah.
Oh, great. So Sabs is going to be on later for this summit on the second half at 5 p.m. So if you guys have not, that summit is already up on the website. On the channel. So, tune in to the second half of the summit. It's going to be on a different link, not this one, but the next one. So be sure to tune in for that, where she'll be talking about cost of living. And we're going to be touching on that a little bit while Michelle is here too, because we also got to touch in on that. As far as the cost of living is concerned, we got to talk about that as disabled people, because if we're earning money through our work, as well as only being able to make so much through being disabled, it doesn't add up, right? Now I know that you shown some facts and figures from cost of living, but I also want to share this. And shout out to Roger Meadows for sharing this with me as well. I'm not sure. I think he's in the chat. And so I absolutely just love this this PDF. Hopefully it will show. Is this it? Should be. Okay. I went back up, but that's okay. I'll get back down. Okay. So this shows the cost of living in different states within the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm in Florida, so it's $30.59 per hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, right? So it doesn't matter how much you make in a wage. I want people to realize this. It matters how much you make in a month if you are disabled. So I could be making $30.59 an hour. That's fine. But I can't make more than $1,470 in a month. That's the limit. And so if I make that much, and let's say hypothetically, you get $1,100 a month just from your Social Security disability, right? So $1,470 plus $1,100 is $2,570, right? Okay, so $2,570, and if you divide that by 160, so that's 40 hours a week. For a month is 160 hours. So divided by 160 hours, that comes out to $16 an hour. So you're making half of what it would cost in order for you to actually live in the state of Florida, which means that if you're disabled and working and making the maximum amount, guess what? You're still screwed no matter what. And if you go over that amount, even if you go a penny over, you lose your disability. So you're back already even worse than what you were before. Michelle?
Within my situation, as you can see on the graph, I live in California. So there it's $42.25 an hour. Mm-hmm. With the calculations that I did with the MIT living wage calculation, mm-hmm. The calculator there, what it said for a single person in the state of California is actually, it's like $39.34 per month. And I'd say that's like bare existence level, not mm-hmm. considering my disability expenses, right? Because when I was just trial working, I ended up, because I'm gathering my receipts for my impairment related work expenses to offset my earnings. I literally spent more, I think, in those 3 months than I have spent in probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I'm actually going to share that really quick, so that we can all see what you were talking about.
Right.
And so when it comes to how much you make, you need to make within Santa Clara County. So let me scroll up just so you guys can see. Living wage calculation from Santa Clara County, California. This is from MIT. So this is for one adult.
Yeah. At present, there is on the affordable housing site in my county, there is not one property that is less than what I get in my disability check alone would not cover a property for rent, or a studio, probably not even a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. And because of that I reached this point because of the situation with my mother passing away, and me suddenly realizing as a single income, I couldn't survive anymore if I wasn't working more than what I could work under disability benefits,
because you think of that 14, the substantially gainful amount, which is $1,470 a month. You add my check, which is, less than $1,500, less than the average. That still doesn't even get me to the living wage amount. So it's like, I knew that I was going to have to find a way to go off from benefits. And I thought I had a solid pathway, but in reality, I don't. And I didn't, because of the ableism that's present everywhere, the structural barriers, the systemic and historical barriers, and that stupid rubber band of comfort, that impacts good people that are trying to do good, but they don't realize their privilege, their elements of privilege, and how it prevents that forward progress, because we don't have solidarity. The disabled experience is not understood. And the only way to educate people, it's a huge burden, and it's not something we get paid to do either. It's not, to get media to coverage a disability story, you have to do a lot of labor to get that. To get a session like this on mainstream media, that won't happen, So and real talk is not allowed either. If you're too pushy, which I'm categorized as that, I'm a little too pushy. And people don't know if they can trust me or not, because, I tell the truth, I speak truth, and that's what I've learned to do to survive. But these programs are not helping anybody. And, the living wage or not living wage, it's like, again, we're prescribed as less than. We are determined as less than by the history of disability in the United States. And through that process, everybody kind of excludes us.
Just wanted to get back to the chat a little bit. Serena says, they told my mama, who also had severe bone spurs and chronic pain, you can still work with your feet propped up. Who the F is going to hire someone like that? Nobody. She tried. So yeah, sometimes they'll say, like, for instance, I've been told, well, maybe if you just get yourself used to working right after dialysis, you'll get used to it, and then you can work every single day. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you seen me after dialysis? I'm not good for anybody. It's not just a physical exhaustion. It's also a mental exhaustion. I can't even speak correctly. This is why when after dialysis, I don't want to talk to nobody, because I can't even speak correctly. Like, it really affects you physiologically, and people don't realize it. And so some people, through their ableistic thinking, will be like, oh, well, just do this and you'll get used to it. And they'll even use anecdotal evidence. Well, I knew this person. Not everybody's the same.
And when you're putting out so many fires in your personal life.
True.
Like for me, when I started working, and thanks to the pandemic, my time clock got messed up and my wheelchair failed. My wheelchair went down. And because it was beyond the 5-year mark of me having the wheelchair, I could not get it repaired. And the process to get approved for a new wheelchair is like 3 to 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
So in that time, when my chair goes to the shop, I become homebound, not because my home keeps me bound up, but because I literally can't move in a way that is healthy for me. My pain level goes really high, all of these other things. And I start falling more. And that's a risky situation for me. I broke multiple bones before I realized that my falling was due to not me being somehow inadequate, but because of a true health issue. But that health issue is like hidden for people too. Doctors don't understand it. The rate of discrimination within the medical system for people that are disabled is huge. They just say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not accepting that insurance right now, and you don't have a provider, Yeah. So all of these things, we're juggling those things too. And it's a whole lot of energy towards, educating people. And then the legal system is the point I wanted to make with the chat that you shared too, was there are legal protections for people. However, unless you have a strong advocacy group supporting you in that process, and unless they've done some work ahead of time, you encounter that capitalistic barrier of, oh, you're too much work. Oh, that's too much for us to do. And it's like, it's hidden in, that's where the bureaucracy gets weaponized, And it's not as easy, oh, just file a lawsuit. No, it is hella hard to prove discrimination when they can claim, oh, this hurt our bottom line. Oh, they were too different. They needed things we didn't understand. So they just couldn't do the job, and those things will pass depending on what judge you get, depending on, EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, doesn't take every single case. They don't certify every single charge. And then once and if they do, you likely are not going to get the outcome that you want, because ultimately EEOC is also about systems change and less about the individual, which means they want the employer to learn and do better so that they don't get future lawsuits. They're less about protecting me. So then in order to do that, you have to get a private attorney. And most private disability attorneys, it's really hard to find a good one because it's so hard to prove the discrimination. But there are good resources about accommodations. Ask Jan is one of those resources that you can literally go and look up what you're struggling with, of like, say, your feet, for example, and it will give you what you can ask for. It will give you links to those resources so that you have a stool to sit at, so you're not on your feet all day long. And there are workplace protections, but this is where you have to be discerning about where you're working, and we can't always be discerning about where we're working either.
And I want to get into that after this super chat. Thanks to the $10 from Colin. Colin says the Mayor Youth Summer Program in DC pays teens $9 an hour. The minimum wage is $17, and people are like, it's a way to get teens out of trouble. They can make way more money off the street. But if they're doing the work, then pay them $17 an hour.
I have electeds here locally that don't pay their interns because they're college students. We're giving them experience. And it's like, these are actually people from the global majority that are not paying their interns because they're complicit with the capitalism system.
Wow.
And that's never okay. And I worked in a very small nonprofit for 5 or 6 years, and we couldn't pay our interns because we didn't have the funding stream. But I did extra work to make sure I matched the internship to what they were seeking so that it would propel them forward in their life. I wasn't just extracting their labor. I was collaborating and creating those solutions that would create a better outcome for them down the road, And it's hard to be in that situation, but a government structure, they have enough money. That's just ridiculous. And the same with this. The other thing I saw with that mayor's thing is a racial thing, which is they are saying these kids need help. We need them to protect them and put them to work so they're not doing crime and other things. No, these people have human needs. Those human needs need to be met. They will likely only go to crime if they absolutely have to. So let's not make them have to go to crime. And to state that they're just needing these services to stay safe is a racial issue, and it's a class issue that I just don't like the framing of,
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to talk about accessibility, because a lot of times that's something that also we have to consider when looking for work as well, is the accessibility. Does the place of employment that you're potentially trying to go to, do they have wheelchair accessibility? Do they have vision accessibility for those of us who are visually impaired? And for people like myself, for me, it's a time accessibility. Will they be able to accept the hours that I can work as a dialysis patient? Because I can't work 2 days in a row except for on the weekends. Or if you guys want me to work on Mondays, you guys can't schedule me Tuesdays. I can work on Wednesdays, but you can't schedule me on Thursdays. And then on top of it, if you guys want me to work, can I work very late? No, because I have to be at dialysis very early in the morning the next day. And so are you guys going to be able to accommodate that? And so accessibility is also a very important thing when it comes to trying to get a job while you're disabled.
Yeah. I didn't have access to a bathroom whenever I needed it. I had to actually pace myself in the day. The door to the bathroom actually was out of compliance even with the ADA, but because it was a rented building that my workplace was in, they didn't want to do anything. And I think it goes beyond just they couldn't do anything, because I saw other things happen along the way that were important enough to make happen. Most workplaces also do not have to be ADA compliant up until the point that they have a disabled worker that needs that accessibility. Now, this should have been changed many, many years ago, but I kind of blame this more on capitalism than anything else. You know, when you're a public place like a store or someplace that has customers in and out, then yes, you have to be wheelchair accessible. You have to be ADA accessible. But up until a point where you have, like for me, a cubicle spaces are not designed to be wheelchair friendly, just full stop. So they were able to modify my cubicle so that I could actually work. But right up to the day I was supposed to start, it was like, well, if we can't do this, you can work remote, right? Now, in most jobs, working remote would have been great for me. But in this organizational culture that I was actually in a position that I was trying to change that culture, the lack of accessibility put me in further down the rung. It made me look like I couldn't do the work. They also had the secretary or the receptionist had to let me into the office space because I couldn't navigate that door system either. And they opted to not get an automatic door for me because of the rented space. So without the cost of inaccessibility to a disabled person is huge. And that's it's a determiner between can you work, can you not work? And I think that that's important to remember, that we may not understand all the elements of accessibility, but there's a law, there's all kinds of resources that are free and available to people that people can utilize and find and double check their process. And all you really need to buy, if even buy it, is a freaking yardstick. If you take a yardstick, 36 inches, it's not 100% ADA compliant, but it's enough to make functional access happen. I also, because of how far behind my county is, I don't have access to mental health care. I don't have access to many other things because the office spaces of those nonprofits are also not wheelchair accessible 100%. They are, in the sense of before they put any furniture in, they were ADA compliant. But as soon as you start putting furniture in, and as capitalism, what do people need more of? We always need more space. We need space to store things. We need space to put things away. So the space that is afforded to accessibility is not understood as to why. And, oh, hey, we have this big space under the bathroom counter. Let's stock it with stuff. Let's our closet's overflowing. We have this extra space. So, you know, it's the gaps just really start to gang up and eat. And but it dates back to, always goes back to intention. And if you are not intentionally being inclusive, you by default are excluding people, full stop. And that happens with any marginalized identity. If you're not intentionally calling them into the room and seeking their feedback and their input, you're not including them.
Yeah, that's deeply important. And that inclusion also needs to be thought of without the idea of centering yourself. It means taking them and sometimes even asking them to be the leader in that process so that they can. So it's just like saying, okay, we want to make things more accessible for people who are in your situation. We want you to lead this and show us what to do so that we can do this better, so that not only is it good for you, but all the people who are in your situation who comes after you.
And we'll find a way to pay you for this expertise.
Thank you.
It's the other piece to that I think gets forgotten. And I've recently had to make that distinction to a lot of groups that I used to freely give my labor to. Mm-hmm. I can no longer freely give my labor because I don't have enough to survive. I had to put the oxygen mask on myself first to take care of me until I reach this level of where I need to be, where I can have a little bit of comfort in my life. You know, I'm struggling and I need that resource. The other thing I really work to do, and I appreciate my friendship with you and with others in the RBN group, is I prefer to follow the disability justice framework from Sins Invalid and the BIPOC, the global majority people that created this as in answer to the disability rights movement. So disability rights is very much disability so white. And then I'd add in disability so comfortable too, because you get a lot of people that are at the top that have struggled. I'm not saying they haven't struggled, but they're very comfortable. They may have forgotten some of these things. They may have forgotten what it's like to exist on food stamps.
Yeah.
When you get $1,000 a month, your food stamps are like $10 or $15, and the labor to get that $10 or $15 sometimes just isn't worth it.
Yeah.
So with all of this, so with you guys, what I'm saying is I prefer those most at risk and those most impacted be the ones leading the charge. And that's based in the disability justice framework. I believe in allying with and supporting and amplifying the people that are more impacted than I am, because I still have white skin privilege, which that's a whole different, we can plan a session on that we could talk more about that, because that's a whole unpacking too, because within white communities, disabled is like shunned and kind of marginalized in a way that is toxic as well, but it's not related to race, it's related to attitude. So
yeah. And I have the privilege of not being invisibly disabled. So people see me, they don't see my disability.
Right.
So I have that privilege of, and then I also have male privilege too, but that's a whole nother thing. But we have to discuss these things and realize that they also intersect, right?